Now, the latest from ITV News Meridian in the south.
Good evening and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines here in the south. Platforms deserted, trains cancelled. More than 500,000 passengers are hit by more strike action on the railway.
The village church gutted by fire after a gardener's bonfire spreads. Will weddings and christenings be at risk?
We step aboard the biggest ship ever built for the Royal Navy before she makes Portsmouth her home next year.
It's like a 5-star hotel. I can't wait to get on board.
And missing Millie, a cat who disappeared for 6 months, is found hundreds of miles from home. Good evening. Train passengers in the south have been bearing the brunt of a bitter dispute on the railways, with services cancelled and platforms deserted.
Hundreds of guards on southern trains began their 24-hour strike at midnight over planned changes to their role.
Southern operates trains from Southampton along the south coast to Brighton and beyond, through Surrey, Sussex and onto London Victoria and London Bridge.
More than 300,000 rail passengers have faced disruption today, with no trains running at all on some routes. The company says it's managing to run around 2/3 of its 2,100 services.
Well, the two sides are blaming each other for today's dispute and for the lack of progress since a previous strike last month, as our transport correspondent Mike Pearce explains.
Once again, stations were deserted, and where trains did run, services were limited. Many passengers were unable to travel. Those who did faced a reduced service.
It is disruptive for people, and the service is not as good as we would like, and in some areas we're not running any train services at all. Other areas there's less trains in the evening, so again people do need to check. It is disruptive for people, and the RMT strike is something that we really do not want to happen.
If you read into the strikes and why they're doing it, I think it's all a bit excessive.
But nevertheless, it's disruptive.
It's blooming annoying, yeah, nevertheless.
Is this annoying for people now?
I think so, yeah. It's happening quite a lot recently, so it's just the not knowing, I think. I wish they'd just get something sorted.
Among passengers, views are mixed over Southern's plan for drivers to close doors, allowing conductors more time to spend with passengers. But many are backing the guards, who say they should retain their safety responsibilities.
I think passenger safety is paramount, and I've got friends who work on the London Underground and our drivers and our ticket office assistants, and I know that with the reduction of people in those jobs, it does mean passenger safety is compromised.
They don't do it unnecessarily. They feel strong, and sometimes it's the last resort just to get maybe back to the table again.
Southern say no jobs will go and pay will not be cut.
The company want to portray the role as being simply about closing doors, and that could not be further from the truth. Closing doors is a part of it, but the most critical part is when there's an emergency and the driver is incapacitated, which is often, then the guard can step in and protect that train and protect the passengers.
I say to the RMT they should concentrate, like we are, on improving the service that we offer to our customers. We want our people to be more visible on trains, we want our people to be able to walk up and down the trains and provide a good customer service. We want less cancellations, we want more reliability. I think the RMT should focus on that.
Here on the picket line at Horsham, they hope today's action will force both sides back round the negotiating table. The problem is neither side seems to want to budge. So in the end, it appears that Southern will simply implement its changes from August. Meanwhile, more disruption is looming, with drivers expected to announce the result of a ballot for strike action over the issue next week. Mike Pearce, ITV News, Horsham.
In other news, a protest has been taking place in Dorset over plans for a major shake-up of hospital services across the county. The rally in Dorchester was timed to coincide with a meeting to consider the plans which would see the Royal Bournemouth Hospital become the main A&E unit. Poole and Dorchester would retain a limited emergency service, and Poole would also specialise in planned operations. The organisation says the changes would save lives. A final decision will be made next year.
It's going to be more harder for people, with parents, with kids and stuff, to travel so far, if they have cars or not. It's ridiculous.
It's bad enough going from Poole to Bournemouth, and if you've got to come from, Dorchester as well, that is just not on.
Lives are going to be lost and people will have to travel further, and if you're going to travel a sick child all the way to Bournemouth, one, it's a risking their life, and two, the stress and the cost to families is so much.
A fire which destroyed a church roof in Hampshire started when a gardener's bonfire spread out of control.
The blaze has gutted the St Thomas More Church in Hartley Wintney near Fleet. The flames took hold when the fire spread to a nearby shed next to the church building.
Well, parishioners have been rallying round to help salvage what they can, as Richard Slee reports.
By the time the flames had spread to the church roof, firefighters were on the scene, spraying water into the rafters. The fire started here. A church volunteer was burning some rubbish when a nearby shed caught light. Local resident Matthew Hook was one of the first to notice something was wrong.
Just doing the washing up, I heard some loud crackling and so forth and ran out the back. I actually thought that the caretaker had just started a fire and our neighbour had some washing on the line, so I thought I'd take that in for her, and then I discovered that the shed was ablaze and that the roof wasn't far off either. So just grabbed the neighbour's hose and threw that over to the caretaker, but it was a bit too late by that point, and the fire brigade were on their way.
While the flames spread across the roof, local residents and firefighters tried to save what they could, including the church pews. St Thomas More has about 70 regular churchgoers. One of them is Nigel Beasley, who's been attending services here for 46 years.
Very sad. Relieved, but some of the things we value very much seem to be untouched, but sad.
Well, this is quite a shocking sight, but apparently it's not as bad as it looks, and it's hoped that the church will be repaired in time for Christmas.
Spent a lot of time this morning with the loss assessor, and as you've looked around and seen already, the main frame structure of the building is totally okay. It's just the roof that we have lost. We've secured 95% of the contents, which is great news. And the most important thing is that nobody was seriously hurt.
And the church community has rallied round, with a funeral next week, a forthcoming wedding and regular Sunday services being relocated to a nearby Anglican church. Richard Slee, ITV News, Hartley Wintney.
More news. Police are hunting for a 23-year-old man wanted in connection with the murder of Michael Freshwater in Southampton. The body of the 49-year-old was discovered in Westridge Road on April the 29th. Detectives have renewed their appeal for Kevin Suika to hand himself in. In total, 12 people have been arrested in connection with the murder and on suspicion of supplying Class A drugs.
A 17-year-old boy who caused £20,000 of damage to a special school in Fareham has been ordered to do 30 hours of community service and given a 12-month court order. St Francis School was closed for a week last November following the break-in. The teenager admitted vandalising 2 other schools.
2 men have been jailed for 3.5 years for hiding almost 3 million smuggled cigarettes in a barn near Basingstoke. Police made the discovery in the village of Bramley in June 2014. HMRC say the men evaded more than £650,000 in tax.
The University of Brighton will become the first uni in the country to introduce a so-called sugar tax on the price of sugary drinks. The move has been praised by celebrity chef Jamie Oliver, and with the money raised spent on food education for students. Last year, Brighton became the first city in the country to pledge to tackle sugar consumptions.
You're watching ITV News here in the Meridian region. We're delighted you are. Thank you for choosing us. Coming up.
In training for Rio, how our medal hopefuls are using the latest technology to help them go for gold.
Well, you're watching ITV News. And for more on all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, call us please, 0808 1010 095, the number to ring. Or you can get in touch via Facebook, or why not send us a tweet if you prefer, at ITV Meridian.
Now, the Queen went to Parliament today to outline the laws the government wants to bring in over the next year.
Yes, but for the first time in more than 6 decades, many politicians didn't seem to be concentrating on the details of the Queen's speech. As Phil Hornby now reports, they've got other things on their minds.
The pomp and ceremony were the same as ever. The weather was the same as it often is, but this definitely wasn't business as usual. Lots of legislation to talk about, but nothing too controversial. The government seemed to be saying just weeks before the EU referendum, let's not frighten the horses. Gone were policies like the recently ditched promise to force all schools to become academies. But there was a plan to give prison governors the freedom to run their prisons how they want. Prison reform, the big headline grabber of this Queen's speech. There were pledges about housing, another mention of the huge developments planned at Bicester and Basingstoke, and a promise to make adoption easier. But one line overshadowed everything else.
My government will hold a referendum on membership of the European Union.
By tradition, two backbenchers make witty speeches, or try to, ahead of the main debate. One of them today was the MP for Bracknell, who's also a GP. He got them laughing all right, but among the jokes, a sly dig at his own government.
If colleagues don't think I delivered this speech very well today, just be grateful that we are not holding this debate at a weekend, when I understand from some that doctors don't perform as well.
And then, was the good doctor about to come off the fence at last over Europe?
That I have kept my own counsel on June's big European event. But the time is fast approaching when I feel I should make my position clear. In my view, I can see no good reason we should exit. At least not before the semi-finals.
Yes, Euro 2016 kicks off on the 10th of June, 13 days before the referendum. Phil Hornby, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Let's now get a preview to London. Mary Nightingale.
Living with Ebola, an exclusive interview with nurse Pauline Kafiki. She tells ITV News how she fought the virus not once, but twice, and why all this could be yours for just £1. Find out how with Mark Austin and me at 6:30.
We will, thank you very much indeed. Now, it's hoped a biplane that was due to appear at the Farnborough Air Show this July will be fixed in time after it crashed in America.
The spirit of Artemis is being flown by adventurer Tracy Curtis-Taylor, who survived along with her passenger. It was part of a round-the-world adventure. She's been recreating journeys made by aviation pioneer Amy Johnson in 1930, including her most famous flight from Britain to Australia.
Well, our reporter Emma Wilkinson joins us now. Emma, Tracy is okay, but tell us what happened.
Yes, well, you may well remember earlier this year Tracy Curtis-Taylor arriving in Sydney after an epic 13,000-mile journey from Hampshire. Well, this latest challenge was to fly in that very same vintage biplane across America from Seattle to Boston, but she crashed in the Arizona desert. Now, Tracy says she'd stopped to refuel, and then just after taking off, there was a partial loss of power. The plane started to sink, but she managed to turn, avoiding some power lines, and brought it down into open desert.
So how bad was the damage?
It was extensive. Remarkably, Tracy herself wasn't hurt, but as the plane came down, the right wheel struck a mound, tearing off the right landing gear, throwing the plane onto its left wing. It cartwheeled tail over nose. Fortunately, the cockpit remained intact, but the plane will need to be shipped to Hungary to be rebuilt. Now, Tracy was offered a similar plane to complete this journey, but she says after coming so far in this one, she's deeply attached to it, can't imagine doing it in anything else, and so just wants to stick with this one. Now, she was supposed to appear, of course, at the Farnborough Air Show in July. That's where the plane will remain in the future as well. She says it's very much a long shot that that will happen now, but she hopes it will be fixed and flying again in time for that show.
She's quite a lady. Emma, thank you very much indeed.
Now, a garden at the Chelsea Flower Show is being created by a black designer for the first time in its 103-year history.
Yes, Juliet Sargent from Brighton has created a design as part of an anti-slavery campaign and highlights the issue of modern slavery. The event starts next week, and Charlotte Wilkins has the story.
Hidden behind closed doors, this garden represents captivity, modern slavery, yet also the path to freedom. It's being created for the Chelsea Flower Show by Brighton designer Juliet Sargent as part of an anti-slavery campaign.
When you go to an art gallery, you're not surprised to be challenged or find something a bit thought-provoking when you look at a painting on a wall. And I think it would be nice if people expected the same of gardens, expected to have something a bit educational or challenging or that raises an issue.
Juliet is the first garden designer who is black to take part in the Chelsea Flower Show in its 103-year history. She says it's surprising, especially as the industry is generally an inclusive one.
When I'm out and about designing gardens and in the horticulture industry, it is true that it's usually myself and one or two other gardeners or garden designers that are of colour. So I think it is important that we talk about it because it is surprising, yeah.
The centrepiece of Juliet's garden is an oak, which represents the one Wilberforce sat beneath when he resolved to abolish slavery. But Juliet hopes the design will help visitors to understand that slavery still exists.
I had an opportunity to meet some survivors of slavery a few weeks ago, and it really helped me to put some faces to the statistics and just to think that they are ordinary people like you and me. It could happen to our daughters, our children, our relatives, and that's quite a sobering thought.
The Chelsea Flower Show runs from the 24th to the 28th of May. Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News.
The aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth, the biggest ship ever built for the Royal Navy, is nearing completion, and in less than a year she'll sail into her new home of Portsmouth.
At the moment, this ship, which already has a crew of more than 500, is in Scotland. And in the first of two special reports, our reporter Richard Jones has been to have a look at how the huge project is going.
I name this ship Queen Elizabeth. May God bless her and all who sail in her.
She's looked like a ship since she was named by the Queen 2 years ago, but she hasn't really felt like one until now. Above deck, she's still a building site, but down below, HMS Queen Elizabeth is coming to life, with galleys, messes and cabins ready for her crew. On the bridge, the tiny wheel that will steer this 65,000-ton giant is already in place.
We've got a little bit of work going on today. But in the coming weeks, months, we should be done, ready to go.
Jess Hughes is one of the newest crew members aboard. This is her first ship, and she's had the chance to see where she'll be living. On some older vessels, junior ranks would share messes with dozens of people. On Queen Elizabeth, it could be as few as 4.
The space is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's basically, in comparison, it's like a 5-star hotel. I can't wait to get on board.
When aircraft are aboard, the crew will swell to almost 1,000, and 4 galleys will feed them. This is one, and this is what's expected of the cooks.
About 1,500 meals per day for this galley, for the whole ship's company-wise. Obviously, we'll be looking somewhere around about 2,400. And then fully embarked, that's obviously going to increase markedly. At this galley, we're going to be looking at around about 3,000 meals per day, and then in the after galley, we'll be looking somewhere around about 1,200 meals per day.
This is where they'll eat. It looks a bit bare now, but it'll be better once the crew are aboard.
There are a few funds that we can dip into. They usually get a few junior rates together, make up a little committee, and they'll pick decent pictures to go on the walls. Not too revealing, but there'll be some nice pictures up there of maybe some sports cars and some sports stars.
With new crew members arriving all the time, the sense of excitement about going to sea is beginning to build.
Every day something new happens. Of course, the engineering
continue to be a challenge. These are monumentally difficult ships to build, commission, test. But it's really exciting to see her really come alive.
With a new ship and a new crew, training is vital. Fire is one of the greatest threats to any vessel, and emergency drills are already taking place.
There's a lot of new kit in here which we haven't seen before, even down to the level of a new type of firefighting nozzle, which we're now going to use. So people coming from a wide variety of ships have to come up to speed on this and understand how to use all the equipment and the technology to maximise our ability to deal with a large fire on board.
5, 4, 3, 2, stand by! Rush!
Team building is also underway ashore in the form of a field gun crew, training to take on other ships in the fleet.
We do need the crew to come together, so literally field gun, as we're doing now, is all part of this, and literally there's no better tool. Literally you've got a team of 18 working as one. We need that on the field gun track, but primarily on the ship. Without teamwork it doesn't work.
Like Bruce, many of the crew are commuting from the south coast to Scotland, and they can't wait until the Queen Elizabeth sails for her new home. The plan is that the crew move aboard in the autumn. The ship sets sail from Rosyth for sea trials in the new year, and she arrives here in Portsmouth in the spring. Tomorrow, how Portsmouth is getting ready. We meet the man whose job is to make sure HMS Queen Elizabeth enters harbour safely. Richard Jones, ITV News.
Now, just 11 weeks until the Rio Olympics, our region's athletes are getting ready, and UK Sport are claiming Team GB and Paralympics GB will be the best prepared away team at the Games.
Well, it's a bold claim, but coaches say new technologies are helping to give athletes the edge. David Wood has been finding out what's involved.
This close to Rio, every second of training counts. And all our Olympic hopefuls now rely on technology as well as technique. From machines measuring their power to climate-controlled gyms set to Rio's temperatures. Hockey player Ashley Ball trains at Bisham in Berkshire, and she's aiming to compete in her second Olympics this summer.
Do you feel more prepared this time than you did 4 years ago?
We were very prepared for London, and there's always advances. So whether we're more prepared, I think it's just different, and the advances probably, well, they hopefully will add to our performances and hopefully our results as well.
The hockey players wear GPS trackers so coaches can analyse how far they've run as well as how hard they've worked during sessions.
I think one of the most important things is that we actually keep our athletes really, really healthy. The sheer volume of training they do, we can run the risk of injuring them or making them ill. And so we use the technology a lot to sort of monitor training volumes and loads, and then we can individualise those loads for each athlete. And that way we keep them healthy, keep them training, keep them on the park and in good state to compete in Rio.
And with the clock counting down to the Rio Games, our Olympians and Paralympians want to win more medals than at any other away games.
And of course, intense physical training, particularly in a gym, lifting heavy weights, is nothing new to our Olympic hopefuls. But what's changed in the build-up for Rio compared to London 2012 is a lot more emphasis on training the mind as well. Our athletes need to be physically strong as well as mentally.
What we focused on with the sports now is what it takes to win and what it takes to deliver the very best performances that are world-beating. And it's about physical, technical, tactical, mental preparation. The discipline of psychology coming to the fore.
So let's get the...
And if the worst happens and anyone picks up an injury, technology comes to the rescue too. Currents in this pool help athletes to rebuild muscle in a safe environment. But most hope never to have to visit here, and their focus now is all about their final fine-tuning. David Wood, ITV News.
Meanwhile, in football, AFC Bournemouth have delayed plans to redevelop their stadium's south stand as negotiations continue to buy the ground. The plans would have increased capacity at the Vitality Stadium by 3,000. Meanwhile, on the pitch, their first season in the Premier League, of course, it came to an end last night with defeat in the postponed match at Manchester United. A Chris Smalling own goal made it 3-1.
Now, 4 peregrine chicks have hatched in a nest at the top of Salisbury Cathedral Tower.
The Peregrine parents are busy minding and feeding their brood, who'll be ringed so they can be tracked in about 2 weeks' time.
Well, Salisbury is not the only cathedral to have chicks. Chichester also has some that have hatched. 54 chicks have now been raised from the nest box there in 15 years.
Meanwhile, cats are well known to disappear for the day or overnight, only to return when it's time for food. But when Millie from Swindon didn't come home for months, her devastated owners presumed the worst.
But then came an unexpected surprise. 6 months later, they received a phone call from quite a distance away. Robert Murphy takes up the story.
If cats could talk, Millie here would have a lot to meow about. She spent 6 months of her 2-year life on the run from her owners in Swindon.
She went missing in November. By Christmas, we was advertising everywhere. We phoned up vets, phoned up the council, went on the Facebook page to advertise anyone seen her. There was no sightings of her whatsoever.
I mean, it's been horrible without Millie because, I mean, she is my cat and I suffer with a few issues and she's always been there for me, kind of thing. So yeah, being without her hasn't been that good.
Then Jade Fennick and her mum got a call from a vet, but not one nearby.
They tried and said, "Oh, have you got a missing cat?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got a white missing cat with a ginger tail. She's got ginger on her ears as well." And they try and goes, "Oh, she sat here in front of us." Of course, Jade burst out crying. Yeah. And I'm like, "Well, where are you?" They said Lancaster. So I then Googled it and it was 208 miles away.
There's no quick way to Lancashire, particularly if you're a cat. Her owners have no idea if Millie hitched a lift or if someone stole her.
6 months of not knowing what she's been up to or how she's been treated. Everything goes through your mind of what sort of adventure she's been on. Was it a nice adventure, a nasty one? Who knows? But she looks in perfect condition, so I think someone's got to have been looked after her.
Millie is loving life back in Swindon, an important example of why microchipping is important. Robert Murphy, ITV News, Swindon.
Millie, she's absolutely beautiful, isn't she?
I wonder how she did get there.
It's one of her 9 lives gone, though, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
She's beautiful. The weather hasn't been. Can it get better? I doubt it, but let's find out with your forecast this evening. Amanda Houston.
From blizzards to pool, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Hello again. Well, we will need to keep those waterproofs handy over the next few days. Further spells of rain coming our way, although it's not all bad news. There will be some sunshine, especially throughout tomorrow, but overall the weather is remaining unsettled. Now today, low pressure brought in those hefty, lively showers, but you can see it's eventually going to slip out of the way, so some quieter conditions coming our way throughout tomorrow. But then out in the Atlantic, this next area of low pressure will eventually bring in more cloud and rain later on tomorrow night. So for the rest of this evening then, still a few showers lingering out there, and if you do catch one, could still be heavy and thundery in places, but for most of us becoming dry as we edge overnight with some clear skies. But with all of that moisture, it will allow some mist and fog patches to form, which means for tomorrow morning quite a grey and a murky start to the day first thing, but it will brighten up, and for most of us, especially across eastern areas, it will be largely dry with some bright or sunny spells for a good part of the afternoon. It's later on the cloud will increase from the west, and eventually we'll see a few spits and spots of rain working their way across us. Temperature values, though, not doing too bad tomorrow. Highs there between 15 and 17 degrees.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather. Keeping a close eye on summer. The Pollen Count, sponsored by Ilogy Eye Drops.
Well, a bit like the weather, the pollen count isn't looking great over the next few days. When we get this sunshine, we'll be seeing high traces of it underneath the showers, so the pollen count at least will drop back down to moderate. Bye-bye.
Now in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Mark Austin.
Stacey's got our late news. Well worth a watch. For now, though, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you very much indeed for watching. Take care. Join us again soon. From all of us, well, the two of us. Bye-bye.
We're gonna